Hello. Welcome in episode 5 of the Emmitt Sevores Show. Today, we're going to talk about all things Wild Card Weekend. We'll talk about this, the 49ers crushing the Seahawks. I'm going to kind of tell you why I think the Seahawks are a little bit farther away than a lot of people think they are. We'll talk about the Chargers and that epic, just flat out epic choke job that they had against the Jaguars. We will also talk about the Giants upsetting the Vikings. My thoughts on Daniel Jones. Could he be a franchise quarterback? And then we're going to talk about, the Bills and Bengals surviving against backup quarterbacks and why I think the Bengals should be getting a lot more criticism than they are, and they should be getting criticized like the Bills. But before we get into all of that, we'll start with the Cowboys, of course. The biggest market team, the most hated team, the most loved team in all of professional sports in America, probably. Maybe the Yankees, but Cowboys, they crushed the Buccaneers last night. It wasn't close. It truly was not close. They controlled the game in the trenches, both sides of the ball. Dak Prescott, I think he was sacked once on one of the first two drives. I think it was drive number 2 by Vita Vea. But after that, he wasn't pressured much at all. He had all the time in the world. All the time in the world. Just going through his stats, he had 5 total touchdowns. He had a rushing touchdown, 4 passing. 25 for 33, 305 yards. He looked really good. I've always thought he was a top 10 quarterback, and I still agree with that. This helps my case. I think that his playoff struggles have been very over-exaggerated, I think is probably the right word. Like in the playoffs, again, he doesn't have great stats. Now he has 10 passing touchdowns, 3 interceptions in 5 playoff games. But I mean, you go back and you look, and 2016, he put up 31 points versus Aaron Rodgers, and their defense just couldn't get a stop. 2018, he played well versus Seattle in that playoff run. He had 2 touchdowns and 1 pick. And if you go back and you watch that interception, not really on him. Not really on him. It should have been called defensive pass interference. Last year, he did not play well. I'll give you that one. Sacked 5 times, 53% completion percentage. Again, bad interception. If I remember correctly, it's in the end zone. But Dak Prescott last night showed you way closer to what he is than what we've been seeing over the past however many weeks in terms of turnovers. I think that it's been extremely, extremely overblown how bad his turnover issues have been. It truly. But last night, he played, I think, the best game of his career. The best game of his career. I think this is the second time in his career he's had 5 touchdowns. The only other time was at the end of the season last year versus Philly. He played really well. That first drive, after those first 2 drives, I didn't know if he was going to be able to bounce back from that. But he played extremely well. And I think that building more out about the Cowboys, I don't think that they're going to beat San Francisco. I'm not going to pick them to. But I think they're the only team in the NFC that can. They're relatively healthy. Jaron Kearse seems to be okay. Haven't heard what the official injury is, but the reports are that he was walking fine to the locker room. Didn't look like he had a limp or anything like that. If they can stay healthy, I think that they have as good of the best shot of anyone in the NFC to take down San Francisco. We saw this matchup last year. Granted, they feel like 2 different teams. They didn't have Christian McCaffrey last year, obviously. Dallas had Amari Cooper last year. The 49ers are a better team this year. I think they have a better quarterback in Brock Purdy, although he didn't look particularly spectacular. But I truly think that the Cowboys have as good a shot as anyone to take them down. Their run defense is going to be what could cause them problems, but I think they're the only offense in the NFL that can truly hang that can truly hang with the 49ers if the 49ers get rolling on offense. I realize that their defense is good, but since Dak returned from his injury, they've put up 24, 49, 28, 40, 28, 54, 27, 34, 40, 27. They put up a really bad showing and put up 6 points against Washington, but that game has been the outlier. It's been an outlier. Since he's returned, they're scoring. I think they're the number one scoring offense. And they looked like the most efficient offense last night, too. Out of all the playoff teams. I think the only team that scored more was Buffalo. But Buffalo didn't look how Dallas looked. Buffalo did not look how Dallas looked. Dallas was fairly balanced, maybe not, split right down the middle, but, they weren't just 100, they weren't just throwing the ball all over the field. Only 33 pass attempts for Dak Prescott, whereas there were 66 pass attempts for Brady. 66 pass attempts. But you take a look at Dallas's weapons, too. Like, T.Y. Hilton was fantastic in the game. He only had 2 catches. But they came, I think both of them got him first downs, or at least I think he had a 14-yard catch and a 9-yard catch. So first down and 1 yard shy of a first down, and I think that catch might have been on 1st and 10. Dalton Schultz finally, has started to break out. He finally has started to break out towards the end of this season. He's been spectacular in the later half of the season once Dak Prescott has been back. He had 2 touchdowns on Thanksgiving versus the Giants, 2 touchdowns versus Tennessee, 2 touchdowns again last night. This was a season high in receiving yards, got 95. But he's looked better. He looked better in that game than he did all season, especially that scramble drill play. I think that they have a very good shot with the weapons that they have. CeeDee Lamb was, I don't want to say non-existent last night, but he wasn't even a main part of their game plan, it looked like. And they still put up 31. CeeDee Lamb only had 68. He only had 4 catches, only had 6 targets. Michael Gallup had the same amount of targets and had more catches. Like, CeeDee Lamb didn't feel like he was part of the game plan, and they still put up 31 against what is a good Tampa Bay defense. They're not great. They're not a great defense, but they're a good defense. They put up 31. I give them a shot against the 49ers. I'm still probably going to take the 49ers, but let's get into that game. The 49ers, they crushed the Seahawks. They scored 25 straight in the second half. Killed them. 41-23. After Geno Smith fumbled, was not a great day for Seattle after Geno Smith fumbled in the red zone. But that's becoming sort of a trend that I've seen with Geno Smith. I think that the Seahawks are a little bit farther away than the people around me make it think. If you don't know, I'm from Seattle. All of my friends, Seahawk fans, I'm not. If you look at their games against playoff teams this year, Geno Smith hasn't been great. He has not been great. Week 2, they played against the 49ers. And remember, in that 49ers game, Trey Lance got injured in the first quarter? And so they had to bring in Jimmy G, who's, again, a starting caliber quarterback. It's not like they brought in a backup. It's not like they brought in a Nick Mullins or a CJ Beathard or, he's a starting level quarterback. They got outgained by 150 yards. They were getting outgained in terms of yards per play. They had 10 penalties. 6 of those penalties resulted in first downs. They lost the turnover battle 3-0. 2 of those weren't on Geno Smith, but they had a muffed punt, or a punt that was fumbled, I guess I should say. I think it hit off one of the gunners. And then they called a really dumb running back pass in the red zone. But Geno Smith didn't look good. Less than 200 passing yards, a pick, no touchdowns. The only reason they put up points in that game is because I think they blocked a field goal and returned it for a touchdown. And like, even again, as you go throughout the season, he didn't particularly play super well in a lot of these games. Against the Chargers, yeah, they beat them by 2 touchdowns, and they had a really good yards per play, but they tied the turnover battle. Geno Smith had around 200 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 2 turnovers. He had an interception and a fumble. The team still had 7 penalties. Throughout the season, we see it. The Giants was his best game, but still around 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, nothing special, 4.5 yards per play. That'd be last in the NFL. The Buccaneers, that's another one. We're seeing these red zone interceptions. As you go later in the season, that's where we start seeing it a lot more with him. He fumbled against the Buccaneers. It was almost a carbon copy of what we saw last night or 2 nights ago with Geno Smith. Fumbling in the red zone when they have a chance to take the lead in the game or at least get back into the game. I don't remember the exact situation, but I think a touchdown would have tied the game or given them the lead. And they fumbled. He fumbled. That's a red zone turnover. Then the 49ers, again, they didn't have a touchdown on offense until garbage time. Threw the ball 44 times, 238 yards, a touchdown, 5.5 yards per attempt, 8 penalties. The narrative that this team is well coached just isn't true. It's not true. They're flat out not well coached. And if you don't believe me, because everyone wants to crown Pete Carroll, if you don't believe me, I think they've been top half in the league in penalties, or in terms of lack of penalties, I guess I should say, in penalties per game. They've been bottom half of the league every year, except for I think 2018, since 2012, since Russell Wilson's rookie year. They've been bottom half of the league in penalties. That's not well coached. Well coached teams are not consistently bad at being penalized. They're not. They're truly, truly not. And again, as we go over, keep going down the list. He didn't play well versus Kansas City. 40 passing attempts, 215 yards, a touchdown and a pick. That was a pick in the end zone, I believe. Another 6 penalties. They lost the turnover battle, obviously, with that one pick. And then the 49ers game this year, yeah, he played well in the first half. Then he gets, throws an interception, has a fumble. Only 5 penalties, so not as bad, and they were pretty efficient on 3rd and 4th down. They were outgained, again, by 150 yards. They were outgained in every game versus the 49ers by at least 100 yards. I think that they're farther away than a lot of people think. They're really far away. I don't know if Geno Smith is a franchise-level quarterback. We've seen it once. We've seen one good year from him. Again, 30 touchdowns and 11 picks is nothing to sneeze at. It's nothing to sneeze at. Like, that is good. Those are good stats. But when you have 10 touchdowns and 7 turnovers in 7 games versus playoff teams, that's not great. You beat the Broncos. You beat the Lions, which looks like a very good win, but I think they were at that point, their defense was looking at going to be one of the worst in the league, worst of all time. Cardinals, Chargers, who we just saw, are extremely inconsistent. The Giants, that's a good win. I'll give them the Giants win. That's very good. But Cardinals again, and then Rams, Jets, Rams. All those games, none of them had a quarterback worth anything. They're going to need to hit on their draft picks to truly be what I think a lot of people around me believe that they are when it comes to being in that upper tier of NFL royalty. Again, they could take advantage of a very weak NFC. That's definitely possible. But I think that they're farther away than a lot of people think they are. Even if you take out the Niners games, even if you take out those 3 games, they were 2-2. And he still didn't look particularly great. He didn't look great. Truly. Did not look great in all of them, except for the Giants game. So he didn't look good in 3 out of 4. Not exactly what you want. Let's move it to the Chargers, though. The Chargers, man, they blew a 27-0 lead to Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Lawrence, abysmal first half, 4 interceptions. Just insane. Truly insane how bad that, first 25 minutes was for him. For the Jags in general, they fumbled a punt, 5 turnovers, didn't force a turnover in the second half and still came back and won. But I think that brings up a narrative about Justin Herbert this season that not a lot of people are talking about. Do I think he's a top 5 quarterback? Yeah, I do. But I think that he has flaws, and this team has a lot of flaws. And I think it lowers their ceiling. Let's just take a look at games this season. Justin Herbert has shown a huge inability to stop the bleeding in a lot of these games. And again, a lot of that is due to dumb coaching decisions, or a good amount of it, at least some of it. Austin Eckler's never had 20 carries in a game, ever. Never. Been in the league since, I think, 2017, and he's never had 20 carries. This year, they were 1-6 versus playoff teams. But man, a lot of these games that they had were winnable. Very, very winnable. And they just gagged them away. Even some of the games that they won, they gagged away. Let's go through it. Week 1, they were playing the Raiders. They got a 14-point lead. They wound up winning this game against the Raiders. Remember, Khalil Mack, I think, had 3 sacks, got a strip sack at the end. But after their 14-point lead, punt, missed field goal, punt, then the end of the game. It was a 5-point game when Khalil Mack forced that strip sack to seal it. Khalil Mack bailed Justin Herbert out on that one. Then let's go next week. Chiefs. Again, they had a 10-point lead on Kansas City. And then Kansas City obviously scored a touchdown after the Chargers put up points. But after they had a 10-point lead, punt. What wound up being the game-losing pick 6. Remember, I think it was a 99-yard pick 6, Justin Watson. Go Cougs. And then a punt, and then a garbage time touchdown when they were down 10 with 1:11 left. Garbage time touchdown. Week 3 against the Texans. Again, this happens a lot more frequently. They had a 20-point lead. And listen, they won the game. They did win the game. And they finally, this is one of the games where they did. They had a 20-point lead. Punt, fumble. Then they finally got a touchdown. They were using Austin Eckler that entire drive, and then turnover on downs. But the thing is that you couldn't pile it on versus the second worst team in football, the team who's picking second in this year's draft. And even as they go later in the season, once they start playing playoff teams, they played the Niners. They had a 10-point lead. Field goal, punt, turnover on downs, interception to end the game. Chiefs, 7-point lead, punt, fumble, touchdown, interception. Drives after a 10-point lead versus the Raiders. Punt, field goal, end of half, fumble, missed field goal, punt, touchdown, turnover on downs, then the end of the game. The Broncos, the lowly Broncos in week 18, they had a 7-point lead on them. Then they had end of half. Punt, field goal, fumble, punt, touchdown, punt. A lot of punts, a lot of 3-and-outs. And then obviously the Jaguars had a 27-point lead. One drive was the end of half after the Jaguars drove down and scored a touchdown to cut it to a 20-point lead. Then punt, field goal, missed field goal, punt, and then they never saw the ball again. They have a serious problem with holding on to some of these leads. And I think a lot of it has to do with, whether it be the offensive scheme or, the personnel. I mean, they just fired Joe Lombardi, their offensive coordinator. I think they fired their passing game coordinator and quarterback coach as well. But it's really gross what the Chargers have been doing and for the most part getting away with. And I think that we'll forget about this and we'll do it again next year. Just load all the offseason hype on the Chargers, win the offseason Lombardi. But this franchise, I don't know if they're snake bitten or if, I don't know whose fault it is, because a lot of people are blaming Brandon Staley. And I get it to some degree in terms of you should never blow a 27-point lead, and someone is at fault for that. But he allowed 7 points in the first half. He got 5 turnovers. Justin Herbert needs to show up. He has to show up in the second half. Truly, he has to show up in the second half. Do something. Get more than a field goal. 1 touchdown wins that game. 1 touchdown wins that game. And yeah, they had an opportunity at a field goal and the kicker shouldn't have missed. It was one that was close enough that it's not a gimme, but it's one that you got to make. But score a touchdown. Score a touchdown, then you don't have to worry about it. Score a touchdown. Because I think that even if they make that field goal, I think the Jags go down and score a touchdown. I think that they do. Again, the Jags played a perfect second half. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. Then I think field goal. They ended that game scoring 4 touchdowns on 4 drives and kicking a game-winning, or 4 touchdowns on 5 drives, and the 1 drive they didn't score a touchdown was the game-winning field goal. But the Chargers have some issues on their hands, and I don't know how they solve them. I don't know how they solve them. One of my games on the weekend, the only pick that I got wrong, chose the Vikings. I know I shouldn't have. The Giants upset them 31-24 in Minnesota, and Daniel Jones played what I think is probably the best game of his career. I don't want to say by far, but it was one that changed my opinion a little bit on Daniel Jones. I was on the Bolt a couple of days ago. It was, I think, as that game was starting, matter of fact. And the reason I was doubling down on picking the Vikings is because I said, well, I've watched Daniel Jones play quarterback for what is it now? 3 years, 4 years? And he's not great. He's not great. Man, he looked really good. He's had some better statistical performances. He had games where he threw 5 touchdowns in his rookie year against Washington, had 4 again, a lot of rookie year performances. He had a couple of 4 touchdown, no pick games, so 5 touchdown, no pick game. But this season, we did not see the Daniel Jones that we saw in that game, I don't think. The only other one you could say is probably that season finale versus Indianapolis. He had 4 total touchdowns, 91 rushing yards, only 177 passing yards, but completion percentage near 80%, threw for 2 touchdowns, 125 passer rating, really high QBR, 96.8. But he played extremely well yesterday. Extremely well. And it makes me wonder, it makes me wonder if he is going to be a franchise quarterback. Listen, I don't know if he will be. And I think that there's a difference between a franchise quarterback and an elite quarterback. I think that's obvious. I think Kirk Cousins is a franchise quarterback. I don't think Kirk Cousins is an elite quarterback. I think elite quarterback wise, you probably have 8 in the league. Right? Maybe less. I think you have Josh Allen, you have Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Pending what we see, Deshaun Watson was in that category, not anymore. Then I think Trevor Lawrence, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert. And then the NFC, I don't know. Dak and Jalen Hurts, if they can, follow up this second season. Matthew Stafford was elite. Brady and Rodgers probably grandfathered in. But I I am against putting either of them in like my top 10 quarterbacks anymore. Like I think they can have like an honorary spot, but I don't think that it's fair to have them in. But Daniel Jones, I think, could be a franchise quarterback. I think if after seeing that performance, it changed my outlook on him a lot. And listen, like he could totally throw up a really bad game versus Philadelphia, and maybe I'm right back in the position I was before this game. But I think he played extremely well. And honestly, he won a game that I didn't think that they were going to win. I thought it would be close because I think the game that they played earlier this year, well, not I think, I know the game earlier this year they played was close, but I thought it would be close as well. But I thought that they were in just such a bad rut at the end of the year. After beating the Texans, their last 7, 8 games, loss, tie, loss, win, loss, win, loss. I thought that they were did not have any momentum. Yes, obviously they rested their starters in that finale. So if you don't want to give them that loss, fine. But I think that they still had backwards momentum going into this one. And he was able to overcome that. He was able to, or the team at least was able to overcome a really bad drop by Darius Slayton, one that, should have ended the game but didn't. I think he impressed me a lot. He impressed me a lot. And I think what impressed me just as much as him is the coaching staff. Obviously, Brian Daboll's coach of the year. It's not a question, obviously. Again, postseason performances aren't supposed to go into it. But it would have been the right decision before this. Had they gotten blown out 55-0, it would have been the right decision regardless. But what really impressed me with the coaching staff is how much they were willing to trust Daniel Jones. How willing they were to trust Daniel Jones. He threw the ball 30, or he was called for passing plays, or had the ball in his hands at least, outside of handoffs. Threw it 35 times, got sacked 3 times. There's 38 right there. And then he ran the ball 17 times. They were willing to put the ball in his hands 55 times. 55 times in a do or die game. That's impressive to me. That is really, really impressive to me. That they were willing, and again, he's an effective runner. He's an extremely effective runner. He didn't have a great, yards per carry, for generally quarterbacks who are runners have a higher yards per carry than what he had. He only had 4 for 6, but they used him very similar to how the Buffalo Bills used Josh Allen. They were not afraid to run a quarterback power. They weren't afraid to run a quarterback power with him and pick up tough yards on tough downs. It's like even that last drive to set up the touchdown where they obviously got the lead in this one, or, took the lead back, I guess I should say. 12-play drive. Daniel Jones pass, Daniel Jones pass, Daniel Jones pass, Daniel Jones pass. Another pass. 6 passes. 7 passes. 8 passes. Then a run, another pass. He was the only person outside of Saquon Barkley who rushed in from the 2. He was either throwing the ball or he was running it himself. 10-play drive, and he was the main guy on 9 of them. That's impressive to me. A lot of times you'll see quarterbacks, bad quarterbacks, mediocre quarterbacks, like you'll see them get the ball or get a game-winning drive where it's like they throw 1 pass and they hand it off 4 times. You know what I mean? But that's not what this was. He led that game-winning drive. Leading a game-winning drive kind of gets, blown out of proportion. I can't remember who it was earlier this year. Maybe it was Aaron Rodgers. It's like he had my guy, Aaron Rodgers. It's like he had maybe it was against the Patriots, I think. It's like they just ran the ball. That goes down as a game-winning drive because he's a quarterback. But that is a earned game-winning drive from Daniel Jones. An earned one. Truly, truly earned. They were fantastic. They were really fantastic. I don't know if they can beat Philly. Again, I don't necessarily fall for the it's tough to beat a team 3 times thing. I didn't think that Seattle was going to be able to get some advantage on San Francisco. I said, it's not tough to beat a team 3 times if you're the far better team. And I think that Philly's the far better team, but they didn't inspire a whole lot of confidence in their, finale in their season or regular season finale versus the Giants. Well, versus the Giants backups, I should say. They didn't inspire. So maybe the Giants do have a little bit of a shot, but I think that their season will probably come to an end after playing Philly, but they've been extremely impressive, and I'll give high marks to Brian Daboll and higher marks to Daniel Jones. And if he can put another one like this, then I think that they might have found their guy at quarterback. Last one we'll get into. We'll knock 2 out at the same time. The Bills, the Bengals, they both survived. The Bills obviously won 34-31 against Skylar Thompson, whereas the Bengals survived against the Ravens. I think it was 24-17, and survive is really the right word there. That a Hail Mary bounced right off of a receiver's hands. The Ravens did. I think no doubt they would have gone for 2, and then who knows. But the Bills are getting heavily, heavily criticized. Heavily criticized for their performance versus the Dolphins and a third string quarterback. And honestly, I don't get why Cincinnati isn't getting criticized more. Because it's a division game. Well, Bills Dolphins was too. Who are the big time weapons that the Ravens have? Who? Name one. Their weapon is Lamar Jackson, and he's been sitting on the sidelines. Sammy Watkins. I don't even know if Rashad Bateman played. I didn't see him. Mark Andrews, obviously. But, I didn't see a whole, Justice Hill, Gus Edwards, Josh Oliver, J.K. Dobbins, Demarcus Robinson. I mean, what are we doing? Again, they only gave up 17 points. But let me run through this. Think to yourself in your head. Oh, I don't have like a full screen or anything like that, but keep track. What would you rather have? Would you rather outgain your opponents by 192 yards? Or would you rather be outgained by 130 yards? You'd rather outgain your opponent, right? Would you rather have 9 more first downs than your opponent? 9 more? Or would you only rather have 5? Would you rather have 5 less first downs than your opponent? Would you rather have 2.5 more yards per play? Or would you rather have 1.2 yards less per play than your opponent? This is an easy one. Would you rather have 2 penalties for 13 yards or 7 penalties for 42? We're obviously taking the 2 penalties. And then would you rather win time of possession by 4 or lose time of possession by 5 minutes? You'd take all the first stuff, wouldn't you? Because that's what the Bills did. And the other stuff is what the Bengals did. The Bills truly dominated that game. Josh Allen just turned the ball over. And if you want to get into a Josh Allen, forcing a turnover, or, him being a turnover machine, if you want to get into that argument and that's why they're being criticized more, than sure, go on ahead. But I mean, the Bills played well. The Dolphins they didn't even get 304 or 240 yards of total offense on 15 drives. They held the Dolphins to 3.3 yards per play. held a team who has a good rushing scheme, not necessarily a good rushing offense, but a good rushing scheme, to 42 yards on 20 attempts. Had them go 2 for 4 in the red zone. Again, they had the Bills on offense, had 423 yards. They were extremely efficient on third down, 9 for 16. They held the Dolphins to being 4 for 16 and then 1 for 2 on fourth down. They dominated this game, but some bad turnovers obviously cost them. Then you look at what the Bengals did. The Bengals got outplayed. They got outplayed and survived. They got outgained by 130 yards. I think I said 120 earlier. It's 130 yards. They got blown off the field and got a very lucky turnover. A very lucky turnover at the goal line when Tyler Huntley was trying to push the ball over the goal line. Why are we not criticizing the Bengals as much as we're criticizing the Bills? Why? The Bills are dealing with a lot of injuries. They're dealing with Micah Hyde being injured. They've been dealing with that for a while. Von Miller, their big offseason addition, he's out for the year. Why are we criticizing the Bills more than we're criticizing the Bengals? The Bengals haven't performed particularly well, in my opinion, in all of their playoff games. All of them. They have not performed particularly well either of the past 2 years in any of the playoff games. Kansas City aside. Kansas City, they played well. Sorry, I guess I shouldn't say all, but they weren't spectacular in their win against the Raiders last year. The Raiders had a chance at the goal line, 1st and goal, with however many seconds left to win that game. They had a chance. They didn't, but they had a chance. Then they got sacked 9 times. 9 times. You don't win games like that. You don't. Like, it's going to catch up to them. It is going to catch up to them. How bad the Bengals have been playing is going to catch up to them. He was only sacked 4 times against the Ravens, but that's still not great. It's still not great. And their offensive line isn't getting better. It's not getting better. It's getting worse. La'el Collins, out. Ted Karras played last night, but he was hurt. Jonah Williams, out. Or maybe not out, but he was walking on crutches. Like, and again, if you want to give him the injury excuse as why they're not getting, criticized, but it's like, yeah, Jonah Williams dislocated his kneecap. What are we doing? Like, they are not playing well, and everyone's treating them like they're just going to, go on the same run that they did last year, when we all agreed, for the most part, that it was kind of a miracle run. Like, not saying that they're not a good team. I'm not calling them garbage. They're a top 3 team in the league. Top 4 team in the league, top 3 team in the AFC. The only teams who I think are probably better is Kansas City and Buffalo, and they have beaten Kansas City 3 times in 2022. They beat them 3 times in the calendar year 2022. So, like, I don't think that they're not a bad football team. They're not. But I definitely do think that the Bengals deserve to get a little bit more criticism. A little bit more criticism than they're currently getting. Because, when they beat a backup quarterback, they're just tough. They're tough. It's just a gritty AFC North battle. That's just how these things go. But when the Bills do it, and the Bills dominate their opponent, they're in the game because of some really stupid and some really dumb turnovers. It's pile on the Bills. These guys are frauds. Like, what are we doing? Truly, what are we doing? I don't know. I should have another episode coming out on, I believe it should be coming out Friday. Be picking all of the games for divisional weekend. Hopefully I didn't spoil a whole lot of my picks here. 4 fantastic games. Cowboys at the 49ers. Cowboys at the 49ers. Bengals at the Bills. Then we have Jacksonville at Kansas City, and then Giants. The Giants are going to be playing against the Eagles, third time this year, second time with all the starters playing. So we have a good amount of, I think obviously Eagles Giants is a rematch. Bills Bengals is a rematch. Obviously that game ended in tragedy. Thankfully DeMar Hamlin seems to be doing all right. Then Jacksonville, Kansas City, that's a rematch. San Francisco, Dallas, not a rematch from this year, but it's a rematch from a playoff game last year. So a lot of very exciting games coming up. I'm very excited for the rest of the playoffs. I think that there's not a whole lot of bad matchups we could potentially get for the rest of the playoffs. Just taking a look at it, right? You can't AFC championship wise, you're going to get one of the 4 best quarterback or 2 of the 4 best quarterbacks matching up regardless which way you slice it. You'll get either a game with Mahomes Allen, Mahomes Burrow, Lawrence Allen, Lawrence Burrow. And then on the NFC side, you get Cowboys Eagles, Eagles 49ers, Giants Cowboys. Giants Niners is probably the only one that is a stinker there, but that could be a fantastic coaching battle. I know that sounds not particularly like super fun, but that could be a battle of really fantastic coaching. But yeah, no, again, new episode should be coming out on Friday. I think I have a guest lined up for that one, but I'm not gonna say who just in case it doesn't work out. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.